Hi, this is Mr. Evans. In this video I'm going to look at the examiner's report from 2017 paper 2. It's worth, if you haven't already done so, going on the AQA website and just having a look at the assessment resources here. You can get all of the A-level stuff from 2017 there, and you can also get the specimen papers for A-level. The 2018 papers are available, but only to your teacher. They're behind the paywall, so it's really helpful if you can get your teacher to get you everything from 2018 as well, including the examiner's report for 2018, which I highly recommend you have a look at. I'm not allowed to post that because of copyright reasons, so if you ask your teacher for it, I'm sure they'll be able to get hold of it for you. But really important to read that before you go into the 2018 exams. So this is paper 2. Paper 2 is all about the case studies. Okay, in paper 2 you have 3 case studies, quite a lot of data to read and interpret. It's absolutely essential that you do that. In both 2017 and 2018 there have been 3 case studies for you to read and then answer questions on. In 2017 they had a 20-mark question and 2 16-mark questions which all needed evaluation. In 2018 they changed that to 3 16-mark questions, but it's the same structure for a 20 or 16-mark question, as long as it's a to what extent and evaluate question. You know, it's just really important that you include a conclusion. So I'm going to have a look at the examiner's report for this, and I've just summarised a few things. So as I say, paper 2 is all about case studies and reading and interpreting them and using them to build your answers. So it says here in this first paragraph of the overview of the examiner's report, students did well if they addressed the demands of the question and had strong subject knowledge. So I always tell my students, make sure you've got the knowledge and make sure you've got the exam technique. And if you've got those things, if you know everything on the specification, you've got the knowledge and you know how to answer the questions, you've got the exam technique, you're going to do pretty well. So this paper is all about the case study. Students who did well use the stimulus material appropriately in their responses. So that doesn't mean just using huge chunks of it, it means selecting the right data. Some students do not help themselves by describing long lists of data instead of spending a couple of minutes planning and combining information and then developing the information into a coherent and more succinct paragraph. So, you know, it's really important that you spend a few minutes planning. Okay, if you know what your conclusion is going to be, or you know if it's a 9-mark question, you don't need a conclusion, but you know what you're going to say before you start, it's going to help you focus on what's important about the question and build a coherent chain of argument. Okay, so spending a few minutes planning is really important. I can't emphasize that enough. And the other thing it says here is about combining information in the case study. Okay, what the examiner wants you to do is pick out relevant bits of information and link that. So for example, in this paper 2, there was a question on whether the big 4 supermarkets, Sainsbury's, Tesco, etc., should adopt the strategies of the discounters, Aldi and Lidl. Well, you could have looked at the data there and it told you that Aldi and Lidl only stock a limited range of products, and one of the important things for consumers is a choice of products. So there you go, you've got 2 bits of information there. Aldi only stock a certain amount of a few product lines. Customers want a choice of products, so therefore that's an argument that the big 4 should not adopt the discounter model because consumers want choice. So just picking out bits of information that you can link is a high-level skill that examiners want to see. High-level responses were produced by students who read and targeted their answers directly at the questions asked. So if we just have a look at this question here, which is a 16-mark question, the question is, to what extent is cutting prices a good way for any business to respond to a fall in overall capacity utilization? So the question here is cutting prices a good way for any business to respond? All right, it's not is it the best way, it's is it a good way? So just literally using those phrases in your conclusion will help you to specifically answer the question. The use of figures in calculations to support answers was frequently evident. So if you can use a relevant calculation to back up what you're saying, i.e. if you can calculate labour turnover, or if you can calculate a profit margin, something like that, and it's relevant to the question, put that in. Don't just chuck it in there if it's not relevant. It says here, using supporting calculations and combining evidence from the material on numerous occasions helps students develop their lines of argument. It was also good to see students offer support for their evaluative statement. So in other words, you build your analysis in the body of the essay and then you pull out the most important parts that support your answer in the conclusion. Okay, you need to offer support for your conclusion, and you can do that by referring back to what the most important bits of information were in your case study. So it says here, excellent responses structured their answers well, answering the question asked and producing conclusions based on the analysis made. So they're telling you there that they don't want you necessarily to bring in anything new to a conclusion, but they want you to put a weighting on the arguments that you've previously made. Why is this argument more important than another one? Better students made use of the items to highlight arguments rather than writing in general terms. So, really important to plan your answers before you start them. Think about the structure of the answer. What are you going to focus on in each paragraph? Use the case study and have a conclusion that really clearly answers the question. The first line of your conclusion should paraphrase the question so that it really clearly answers it. So a weakness with the paper is that students didn't answer the question that was asked. Other students offered too many separate lines of reasoning, but rather than being selective and offering fewer but more developed and focused points. So this idea of planning your answer, combining data, that's going to enable you to build a complex argument, right? The examiner doesn't want to see lots and lots of arguments. They want to see you develop a complex argument that combines bits of data in your analysis. I thought I read somewhere, it says somewhere in here about its quality rather than the quantity of points. The final sentence of this paragraph says, an effective line of analysis will often direct the argument back to the question itself, having fully explored the point being made. In other words, at the end of each paragraph, you should be linking back to the question. So it's really, really obvious how your paragraph is relevant to the question. Okay, now I've examined for AQA before. Sometimes a student, you might get lost somewhere in their chain of analysis. You think, well, I'm not really 100% sure I agree with this. If the student can link that back and explain why they think that's relevant at the end of the paragraph, you might get some benefit of the doubt marks. So just really ensuring that each paragraph answers the question set is going to help you pick up marks. It says here a number of students analysed well, but the final judgment let them down. The conclusions or lack of them restricted potentially very good answers. So just make sure that you do a good conclusion to your essay. Okay, a good conclusion in my book answers the question, supports that answer using previously identified arguments, and offers some balance. All right, just acknowledge that you are an A-level student of business, that your conclusion isn't always going to be right. Where's some balance in there? And there's plenty of examples of conclusions on this channel. A good judgment answers the question set and links logically to the analysis of the component arguments. Planning responses is essential. So I can't emphasize enough, planning a response is going to enable you to make a better essay. That's recognized by the exam board here. Just taking a few minutes to work out what data you're going to use, what's the structure of your essay going to be, what's your conclusion going to be. If you can do that before you start writing, you're going to have a much better essay and probably get a much better overall grade.